So it is super early in the morning, and I decided to come out here to the front garden because I wanted to harvest some fennel. But before I did that, I wanted to take a look around the garden, and I noticed two things that I've kind of neglected to pay attention to. One is that all of these rose hips, which rose hips, if you don't know, what happens is when the flowers are done producing, the petals will drop, and this little part that underneath it is where the seeds are produced. It will swell up really big, and then oftentimes it will turn orange. So here are some that haven't turned colors, and here's one that has turned an orange color. It'll turn orange or red or a variation of these colors. And honestly, I feel like in some of these it really needs to be marketed as a paint color, because I got to looking under here and there are some that are in the most gorgeous shades of orange. Look at that. Now, these can be used for so many things, but since I use the petals for tea, I also like using the hips for tea. The hairs inside of these, there are some hairs inside of them, and they actually can irritate your mouth. But if you want to, you can open these up and scrape all the hairs out. And also, you can just pick them as they are and dry them and use them for tea that way. So that's a really easy way to do it. But look how round this gets. And these are full of seeds. They're often referred to as the fruit of rose plants. I have a peach tea rose. So I use this plant a lot for teas. And also it makes a really good rose jelly. Oh man, I dropped one way down in the soil. However, to be perfectly honest, I don't recommend that tea to everyone, because this particular rose that I have has a really strong floral fragrance, like that traditional rose water fragrance that we think of. And it can be really strong in tea, and not everybody's going to like that. Now, I am trying to pick off these stems as I go, but you can always do that later. It's a little difficult to do with one hand, if I'm being perfectly honest. You can tell I've been outside in the garden early because my nails are already full of dirt. That is my favorite way to have them though. And there are several of these on here. They're everywhere. This is just the lower bit that are growing. There are so many more up at the top. I cannot believe how many are on this plant, and honestly, I have not paid attention to my tea rose much this year, so there's a lot going on. I did harvest a bunch of petals earlier, more towards summertime, and I can't remember exactly what I did with them. I know that I made some teas, but in the process of moving, I don't even know what happened to a lot of them. They could have gotten trashed or could be in storage, which is really unfortunate. Luckily, we do have a climate controlled storage, so it wouldn't be the end of the world. But I think something I definitely want to focus on is harvesting more for tea this year. And look at this. These flowers are still blossoming. Isn't that beautiful? It has not opened yet. So rest assured that I can come out here and harvest and still get some more roses to dry. And it's early, guys. It's January, right? So to have things flowering already is really nice, and to be able to come out here and get the rose hips is too. Now, I live in southeast Texas, right near the coast, so we're kind of insulated here, and we have a lot longer growing season. However, it's easier for me to grow a lot of stuff during the fall or focus on perennials because it gets so hot here. when they get this plushy color and start to turn orange or bright orange, that's my favorite time. I know when they are bright orange or orangish red, they really need to come off, because these actually will drop and eventually crack open or rot, and seeds will come out of them to produce new roses. So you can grow roses from both seeds and cuttings, although the seeds are not always true to the parent plant. Did you know that in order to have pure seeds, you can't have another species within half a mile of your property? You have to be really diligent about covering flowers to not risk having a crossed rows. However, you can still collect seeds and try it. I always recommend trying it. It's worth it. I don't mind, but insects travel all over to pollinate, and it's really crazy the random mixes that you can get from pollinated flowers, which I think is really cool. Now, I'm not seeing a whole lot more of mature rose hips. All of these right here, it looks like the petals have just fallen off. As you can see, some of them I knocked off and some just fell. Probably from birds coming in here and even the wind. And see how these are really green and they're not swollen yet? They will actually swell over time. So it's kind of like how a berry continues to swell after the petals fall off. This is the same case for roses. So these green ones I usually leave until they swell up and start changing colors, and that's really the best time to do it. However, all of these petals can also be harvested, and you can make teas and jellies and even perfumes out of them, which is really, really cool. So another thing that I noticed when I was out here is that there's a huge amount of dried flowers from my wild bergamot or bee balm plants that I also want to pick. The kind that I have, the flowers are actually purple and really spiky, and then the petals fall off and this is what you're left with, which is really crazy looking, right? Like a lot of mints, they grow along the ground, but the difference is these actually get really tall, several feet tall, and send up these huge shoots with leaves and flowers on them, which is actually really cool and adds a lot of beauty to the garden and a lot of dimension. So look at that. So when I'm harvesting, I need to take some extra precautions because, for one, my sister doesn't usually drink teas, thankfully, but she's actually really allergic to different mints, which is a new allergy that's just forming. And I planted this garden with me in mind long before I knew she was allergic to mint. So I do need to be careful of that. However, she does kind of know what not to go around, but I try not to harvest certain things and put them where I know that she'll drink them, or I tell her, hey, this was grown in this garden. Usually the stuff grown in the front garden she already knows, and she's not a big fan of floral, so that's really good. Now you can see in my hand I already have 2 extremely small seeds. These are the seeds from this wild bergamot plant. It's also known as Bee Balm. Now the one with the purple spiky flowers. So this is what they look like. These are not seeds. This is just the seed head or the flower. In order to get the seeds out, this is actually kind of wet and damp from both the morning dew and because we've had a lot of rain. You just kind of tap it out and the seeds will come out of the seed pod. Now, if I said seed pod, seed head. Now, if you have a dry flower, they're going to come out a lot easier. These are all sticking, and honestly, they've been there for a while, so I'm not sure how many seeds are there. You can also pull apart the flower like I'm doing. Oh, you can't see. You can pull apart the flower like this, and there will be seeds attached to the very bottom of the petals. That's another way you can get them out, or you can just completely open them like this and sprinkle the seeds wherever you want them to go. So that's a couple of ways to get seeds, and this is what the seeds look like. They're really, really small, but this is just one seed head. And keep in mind that I waited a long time and after several rainstorms to harvest. If you let these dry during the summer and you harvest them, they're going to be really easy to get the seeds from. And I actually have several inside in a jar that I harvested that I can get seeds out more easily. But I wanted a little bit extra, and I have these, so I don't want to let them to go to waste. So I'm going to probably start some of these seeds and grow this, because mints are one of my favorite teas. I just need to keep in an area where the food that my sister is going to eat isn't grown with it. And so, which is a lot of time why certain herbs are not grown throughout the entire garden. They're only grown in the front garden bed or in areas where I know my sister's just not likely to go. And the good news is, I'm not talking about a baby. My sister just turned 14, so she has a pretty good handle on what she's not supposed to have. If you have a small child, it's going to be really hard to keep them away from these gorgeous flowers if they have a mint allergy. So this is really amazing, just to be able to harvest all of these seeds. Look at that. So I went ahead and ran and grabbed it. Now I already have a bunch of soil made up from when we transplanted those blackberries, so all I'm going to do is grab this and just sprinkle the seeds on top. There are actually about 10 to 12 seeds in my hand. They're really small. So all I'm going to do is sprinkle these seeds just like that, and you can't even see them, they're so tiny, and let these germinate. And then once they get big enough, I'll separate them into different pots and let them continue to grow. So that's a really easy way to use the plants that you already have and create more plants. I really enjoy that. So that's one of my favorite things, is to be able to harvest seeds. And you can just tap it like this into the soil, and like I said before, you can sprinkle it over the top too. These are not wanting to break up easily because they're so wet. And the seeds will just fall right out. So it's really easy to do. And that's it. And just like that, we've started some wild bergamot seeds, and it took minimal effort. So this is a really great way to start rose seeds and wild bergamot, to harvest rose hips. And likewise, you're also harvesting the seeds. You can clean those out and use them for teas, or you can, and jellies, or you can just dry them and use them for tea that way with minimal effort. And then also look how many of these seed heads that I have. So I'm pretty excited to let these dry out on my counter at the camper during the work week, and then when we come back this weekend to continue working in the garden and hopefully have some seeds that I can start next weekend. It has been really challenging trying to get as much work as possible done on the weekends when we come back into town. I actually think that I need to come down for a week and just stay to work in the garden, but I have not had a chance. There's so much to do at the camper and everything else, and we are in such a hurry to leave. I didn't get to fully clean up. I'm trying to organize everything and really figure out how we can properly fit our family in there, especially when my daughter has OT and PT each twice a week. So now we're gonna, instead of just OT 2 to 3 times a week, we're gonna have OT and PT, so that's 4 therapy sessions a week, and it is a lot of work. So that is definitely something that we need to figure out, is how to organize everything so we can have the equipment in there and get things done for her that we need to do, and also continue working in the garden while ensuring that it's accessible so that she can bring her wheelchair or have her stroller chair out here and hang out with us while we're working. And hear that this is an urban area, so you hear a lot of noise from traffic, including cars, and also planes. There are planes that are coming down and starting to land, so if you hear that noise, that's what's going on. But I just want to do a quick video and kind of show what I was doing out in the garden. I focused so much on this side garden where the blackberries and all of that, the lettuce is growing, the main plants, Swiss chard, things of that nature, onions, that I often leave out this front garden, which is just absolutely wild, full of herbs and flowers that we use for teas or to season or just for so many different things. And I think this year I've really decided to focus a whole lot more on growing medicinal and tea herbs and flowers. That's something that I really enjoy, that I'm really passionate about. And I love all different types of tea, so that is something I want to focus on. I never thought that just watching the kids walk by there and pick flowers and learn about them would bring so much joy, but it really has been. So I invite you along for that journey, and I thank you for joining me as I just sprinkle seeds in the soil and harvest rose tips and show you guys a little bit about what I love to do and what I do during my free time.